11 minutes. That's all the time New York City has from the moment a nuclear missile launches to the moment 8 million lives are changed forever. Not 11 hours, not 11 days, 11 minutes. And here's the part that should terrify you. Most of those 8 million people will spend those final moments scrolling through their phones, completely unaware that everything they know is about to end. Picture Sarah. She's 32. Her morning coffee is still warm in her hand as she rides the Q train, scrolling through Instagram, double tapping someone's breakfast photo. In 9 minutes, her biggest concern won't be that 10 a.m. meeting. It'll be whether she can reach her daughter's preschool 4 miles away before the sky ignites. It'll be whether she can reach her daughter's preschool 4 miles away before the sky ignites. I'm Atomic Capybara, and I've spent 15 years studying nuclear survival scenarios. I've read declassified FEMA reports, analyzed blast radius calculations, and walked the streets of Manhattan with a radiation map pulled up on my tablet. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty, the official survival guide they give you is a comforting lie. It's designed to keep you calm, not to keep you alive. They tell you to shelter in place, they say the subway will protect you, they tell you to wait for official instructions, and while you wait, the laws of physics turn your city into a radioactive graveyard. Let me be clear, this isn't about fear, it's about facts. Nuclear war is the worst-case scenario humanity has ever created for itself, and New York City sits at America's most vulnerable point, so why 11 minutes? Let's talk about the question that makes government officials sweat when the cameras turn off. Mach 20, 15,000 miles per hour. That's how fast an ICBM screams toward you through the upper atmosphere. Your brain can't even process what faster than the speed of sound means before it arrives. From launch detection to impact, depending on where it's fired from, total flight time is 18 to 30 minutes. Sounds survivable, right? Wrong. Here's what everyone misses. There's no 30-minute warning. Not even close. Early warning systems need time to detect, verify, and communicate. Military command needs time to confirm it's not a false alarm. And yes, there have been false alarms. We've come terrifyingly close to ending the world over computer glitches. By the time emergency broadcasts go out, by the time your phone screams that jarring mechanical alert, the countdown has already started. Best case, 15 minutes. Realistic scenario for a city like New York, 11 minutes. Worst case, you'll find out when the sky turns white and the air burns your lungs. Now it gets worse, and I need you to pay close attention here because this is where most survival plans fall apart before they even begin. New York City isn't just a big city. Architecturally, geographically, logistically, it's designed to maximize casualties in a nuclear event. I call it the Manhattan Death Trap. You've probably never heard that term, but if you're in Manhattan when the alarm sounds, you're about to learn what it means the hard way. Manhattan is an island. 14,000 people per square mile. That's not population density. That's a target-rich environment. Over 1.6 million people packed onto a single island, part of a metro area of 8 million. Now add the bridges and tunnels, 21 vehicle crossings connecting Manhattan to the outside world, 21 choke points, 21 bottlenecks. And in a nuclear emergency, every single one becomes a death trap within 90 seconds of panic. I've run the simulations, I've studied the traffic flow data, I've analyzed what happened on 9/11 when people tried to evacuate Lower Manhattan, and they had hours, not minutes. No immediate physical threat, just psychological fear, and there was chaos, gridlock, exhaust fumes mixing with the sweat of terrified crowds, that metallic, bitter taste of adrenaline coating your tongue. People abandoned their cars and walked across the bridges because nothing was moving. Now imagine the same scenario, but you don't have hours, you have 11 minutes, and instead of smoke from 2 buildings, you know a nuclear warhead is inbound. What do you think happens to those bridges? What happens when 1.6 million people realize they're trapped on an island they need to escape in 11 minutes? Here's the real question. If you had 11 minutes right now and you were stuck in traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge, what would you do? Abandon your car and run? Stay and hope traffic clears? Think about it, because the answer you give in this hypothetical might be the exact decision you'll have to make for real one day. Let me tell you what actually happens. Nothing moves. The bridges lock up in 2 minutes. The tunnels become concrete tombs. And when the timer hits 0, everyone still on Manhattan experiences physics at its most brutal. But let's say you're not in Manhattan. Let's say you're in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, New Jersey. Think you're safer? You're not. You're just dying slower. And that should scare you more than the explosion itself. They don't hit one target, they hit multiple targets. Simultaneous strikes, overlapping blast zones, maximum infrastructure destruction, designed by strategists who've spent decades perfecting death. New York Harbor, JFK Airport, military installations, major bridges, power grids. These aren't random, they're strategic strikes designed to cripple the entire Eastern Economic Corridor in one coordinated attack. And when those warheads detonate, the blast zones overlap like a Venn diagram of annihilation. The primary blast radius of a modern nuclear warhead, say a standard 800 kiloton weapon, the publicly acknowledged yield of current Russian ICBMs extends 3 to 5 miles depending on altitude. Total annihilation. Buildings vaporize, concrete turns to dust, people become shadows burned into walls, their final moments preserved in atomic silhouettes. But the blast is just the beginning. The thermal wave extends 8 to 10 miles. Third-degree burns across your entire body. Your clothes catch fire while you're still wearing them. Hundreds of city blocks ignite simultaneously, creating a firestorm that consumes oxygen faster than your lungs can pull it in. And then comes the part that kills most people: radioactive fallout. Radioactive particles rise into the atmosphere, carried by wind currents, settling for hundreds of miles downwind. The prevailing winds in New York blow east-northeast. Know what that means? Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Millions of people who weren't in the blast zone, who thought they were safe, who survived the initial explosion. They'll face radiation sickness over the next 2 weeks, hair falling out in clumps, bleeding gums when they brush their teeth, bone marrow shutting down, cell by cell until their bodies can't produce blood anymore. Here's the truth, hidden behind bureaucratic language. In a nuclear attack on New York City, the blast kills millions instantly, but the fallout kills tens of millions in the months that follow. When the missiles launch, there's no escape route that saves you. 11 minutes isn't enough time to evacuate. So what do you do when you have 11 minutes and an island full of gridlocked bridges? I'll show you the truth no one wants to talk about. Let's start with the deadliest myth in New York, the myth that will kill more people than the blast itself. Because right now, thousands of people think they have a plan. They think they know exactly where to go. They think the subway will save them. They're wrong, and that myth will kill them just as surely as standing on a rooftop to watch the explosion. Let's destroy the most dangerous survival myth in New York City right now, the idea that the subway will save you. I hear this everywhere. Preppers, casual survivalists, even some emergency management guides suggest going underground into the subway during a nuclear attack. And I'm here to tell you that following this advice will get you killed just as dead as standing on a rooftop to watch the flash. Here's why the myth exists. During World War II, Londoners sheltered in the tube during German bombing raids. It worked. People survived. The story became legend. The legend became doctrine. Fast forward 80 years, and now everyone assumes any subway equals automatic nuclear shelter. Wrong. Completely, dangerously wrong. And if you believe it, you're signing your own death warrant. The London Tube protected people from conventional bombs, high explosives that create localized destruction. Nuclear weapons create thermal pulses, electromagnetic pulses, blast waves traveling at supersonic speeds, and radioactive fallout that doesn't care about your concrete ceiling. These are fundamentally different threats, and what stops one does absolutely nothing against the other. New York's subway system has 472 stations and 665 miles of track. Most of it sits less than 30 feet below street level. That's shallow. Radiation shielding requires mass and distance. Every halving thickness of concrete cuts radiation by about 50%. Sounds good, right? Until you do the math. 30 feet of earth and concrete above you gives you maybe 2 to 3 halving thicknesses, a 75 to 87% reduction. Still lethal if the surface dose is high enough. And here's the real problem. The subway wasn't designed as a fallout shelter. It was designed to move trains. That means ventilation shafts, station entrances open to street level, thousands of potential routes for radioactive particles to flood the system. Fallout is dust, fine, invisible radioactive dust that settles on everything like powder. It goes wherever air goes. And your subway platform? It has air circulation by design. Congratulations, you just turned your shelter into a contaminated zone. But it gets worse. Let's say you ignore all that and go underground anyway. Picture it, you're on the platform with thousands of others who had the same idea. The air is thick with sweat and fear. Your mouth goes dry, tasting copper and concrete dust. The heat from packed bodies makes it hard to breathe. Now you're trapped in this confined space, no food, no water, no sanitation, no medical supplies, and absolutely no plan for what happens 72 hours from now when you need to leave, but the surface is still hot. Here's the real question. Would you rather spend 3 days in a subway with zero supplies and 2,000 panicked people, or alone in a sealed basement with food and water? Think about it, because that choice determines whether you survive to day 15. I've studied the declassified Cold War civil defense documents. The government knew subway systems were inadequate. They built dedicated fallout shelters with proper shielding, air filtration, supplies, and structural integrity. Those shelters still exist in some cities. New York has a few, but they're not marked, not maintained, and not accessible to the public. The shelters that would actually save you, they're not available. The subway that is available, it won't save you. So what's the actual science-based shelter strategy for New York City? You need 3 things: mass shielding, a sealed environment, and supplies. The best option? A basement in a concrete or brick building, ideally with multiple stories above you for extra shielding. Interior rooms, away from exterior walls. Windows and doors sealed with plastic sheeting and duct tape. You work fast, the sharp chemical smell of tape filling your nose as your fingers fumble with the edges. Outside, car alarms wail, but in here, you're building your barrier against physics. This isn't Hollywood, this is physics. Dense material between you and the fallout reduces your radiation dose. Distance from the source reduces dose. Time allows radioactive decay to lower environmental levels. The initial fallout is most dangerous in the first 48 hours. Radiation intensity drops exponentially. After 7 hours, it's 10% of peak. After 2 days, 1%. After 2 weeks, 1/10%. Your job isn't to avoid radiation forever. Your job is surviving those first 2 weeks while the worst isotopes decay into less dangerous forms. That requires shelter, supplies, and discipline. Not hope, not subway platforms, not prayers that a ventilation shaft doesn't pump contaminated air directly onto your head. Here's the brutal calculation. If you're in Manhattan when the missile hits, your survival depends entirely on where you are in relation to ground zero, and whether you can reach actual shelter within minutes. Not the subway. Actual shelter. And for most people, the math doesn't work out, the geography doesn't work out, the time doesn't work out. That's the truth they don't want you thinking about. Because accepting that truth means accepting that 8 million people live in an unsheltered target zone with no viable mass evacuation plan. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because knowledge is the only prep that weighs nothing and costs nothing. If you understand what actually works and what gets you killed, you make better decisions in the 11 minutes you have. And better decisions mean better odds. Not good odds, not guaranteed survival, just better than the person running toward the subway entrance thinking they found safety. Now let's talk about what most people don't want to hear, what the blast actually does to your body, because understanding this is the difference between panic and preparation. Let's talk about what actually happens to human tissue when a nuclear weapon detonates. No sugarcoating, no Hollywood drama, just medical physics. The fireball forms in microseconds. Temperature at the core reaches 10 million degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. Everything within a half-mile radius vaporizes instantly. No pain, no awareness. You're converted from solid matter to plasma before your neurons can fire a signal. That's the mercy zone. But most people aren't in the mercy zone, and what happens to them is something no one prepares you for. Beyond that radius, things get worse. The thermal pulse travels at light speed, a flash of infrared and visible light so intense it ignites everything flammable. Your clothes catch fire, you feel the heat before you see the flames, a searing, unbearable wave that makes your skin blister and crack. The smell of burning fabric mixes with something worse, your own flesh cooking. Exposed skin receives third-degree burns. Retinas cook if you looked at the flash. People miles from ground zero go permanently blind because they made the instinctive mistake of looking toward the light. Then comes the blast wave. Overpressure traveling faster than sound. 5 psi buildings collapse. 10 psi reinforced concrete shatters. 20 psi you become a projectile. Your body doesn't break the wall breaks you. Your internal organs experience differential acceleration. Your lungs collapse. You try to breathe, but nothing happens, just crushing pressure in your chest. Your eardrums rupture with a sharp stabbing pain followed by complete silence except for a high-pitched ringing that won't stop. If you're inside a building that's disintegrating, the walls become shrapnel traveling at hundreds of miles per hour. Death is mechanical, blunt force trauma, penetrating injuries, crush injuries from structural collapse. Think you'd survive that? Maybe. But here's what actually kills most people, the combination effect. You survive the thermal pulse with severe burns covering 40% of your body. You survive the blast wave with internal injuries and shrapnel embedded in your leg. Now you're hurt, bleeding, possibly in shock, and the fallout is starting to arrive. No hospitals, no ambulances, no functioning medical infrastructure. A survivable injury in normal conditions becomes a death sentence when there's no trauma care available. You're on your own, completely, utterly on your own. Radiation exposure adds insult to injury. Your damaged body now has to cope with ionizing radiation destroying cells and suppressing immune function. Infection risk skyrockets. Healing slows. If you received a significant dose, acute radiation syndrome starts within hours. The nausea hits first. Your stomach twists. You taste bile rising in your throat. Then comes the vomiting, violent, uncontrollable. Your body is trying to expel something it can't see or fight. Diarrhea follows. Fatigue so deep you can't lift your head. That's not the flu. That's your bone marrow dying. Your body loses the ability to produce blood cells. Without transfusions and antibiotics, you die from infection or hemorrhage within weeks. The physics doesn't care about your will to survive. It doesn't care about your family waiting for you. A 400 rem dose has a 50% fatality rate even with medical care. Without medical care, that number climbs towards certainty, and in post-strike New York, medical care doesn't exist. The hospitals that weren't destroyed are overwhelmed within hours. Staff are dead, injured, or fled. Supplies are limited. Power is gone. You're lying on a floor somewhere, burns covering your skin, shrapnel in your body, radiation destroying your cells from the inside, and there's no one coming to help. This is why survival isn't about toughness, it's about not getting hit in the first place. Distance and shielding determine your radiation dose. Your dose determines your survival probability, and your survival probability in NYC without preparation? Essentially zero. But surviving the blast is only half the battle. The real killer comes after, and it's invisible, silent, and already on its way. Fallout isn't immediate. That's the part everyone gets wrong. You don't get irradiated the second the bomb drops. You get a window, a narrow, terrifying window where your decisions determine everything. Here's the timeline. Detonation happens at T0, the fireball rises, the mushroom cloud boils into the sky, massive, silent from this distance, but you can feel the rumble in your chest even miles away. The air smells wrong, metallic, like burnt ozone. Debris and vaporized material get sucked up into the atmosphere. This material is now radioactive. Particles of dirt, concrete, steel, anything near ground zero, all converted into fallout. These particles start falling back to Earth within 15 to 30 minutes. Not instantly, 15 to 30 minutes. If you're downwind, you have that long to get inside and seal your space. If you waste those minutes panicking, filming the mushroom cloud, or trying to call relatives whose phones are dead, you've just killed yourself. And most people will waste them. I've seen the simulations. I know what happens. Picture James. He had 15 minutes. He spent 12 of them trying to reach his wife on a dead phone network. When he finally ran to his basement, the fallout was already settling. Fine gray dust coating his car, his clothes, his exposed skin. Odorless, tasteless, invisible death. He was 3 minutes too late. The heaviest particles fall first, close to ground zero. The lighter particles travel farther, carried by wind. For New York, prevailing winds blow east-northeast. That means Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, and everything downwind gets contaminated. The fallout plume extends hundreds of miles depending on weapon yield and atmospheric conditions. Initial dose rates are catastrophic. Hundreds of Roentgen per hour at the edge of the plume. Lethal exposure happens in minutes if you're outside. But here's the critical science. Radioactive decay is exponential. 7 hours after detonation, radiation drops to 10% of initial levels. After 2 days, 1%. After 2 weeks, a fraction of a percent. This is the 7-10 rule. Your enemy isn't the fallout, it's time, and you need to outlast it. This is why shelter-in-place guidance exists. You're not hiding forever. You're waiting for physics to work in your favor. 2 weeks sealed inside, the air gets stale, you hear nothing but your own breathing and the static hiss of the battery radio. No sunlight, no fresh air, just you, 4 walls, and the knowledge that outside is death. But here's what they don't tell you about those 2 weeks. You need supplies. Water, food, a sealed shelter, and most importantly, information. A battery-powered radio tells you when it's safe to emerge. Without that radio, you're guessing. And guessing wrong means you step outside, take a breath, and absorb enough radiation to kill you in 72 hours. The government's 2-week shelter recommendation isn't arbitrary. It's based on decay curves. 2 weeks gets you through the worst of it. Not all of it, just the immediately lethal phase. After that, you're dealing with elevated background radiation for months or years, but at survivable levels if you're careful. That's the timeline. 15 minutes to get inside, 2 weeks sealed in, then cautious emergence into a world that's been transformed. Miss any part of that sequence, and you become a statistic in the casualty reports nobody will ever publish. But knowing the timeline is useless if you think you can evacuate, because your evacuation plan, it's already dead. Let me show you exactly why. Your evacuation plan is fantasy. Let me show you the math. Manhattan has 21 bridges and tunnels. During normal rush hour, roughly 400,000 vehicles cross those routes in 3 hours. That's with functioning traffic lights, no panic, and everyone following the rules. Now trigger a nuclear alert. Every vehicle tries to leave at once. Within 90 seconds, every crossing is gridlocked. Within 5 minutes, people abandon their cars and run. Within 10 minutes, the bridges become parking lots. Car doors hang open, engines still running, exhaust fumes choking the air. You can hear the panic, horns blaring, people shouting, the metallic scrape of abandoned vehicles. You're not evacuating, you're trapped in traffic when the warhead detonates, and there's nothing you can do but watch the sky turn white through your windshield. But let's say you're on foot. Average walking speed is 3 miles per hour. The blast radius extends 5 miles. The thermal pulse extends 8 miles. You need to cover 8 miles in 11 minutes to escape burns. That requires running at 44 miles per hour, sustained. Your lungs would be screaming. Your legs would give out before mile 2. You're not Usain Bolt. You're not even close. The only evacuation that works is pre-evacuation, leaving before the missiles launch, before tensions escalate, before the alert sounds. That means monitoring geopolitical situations, having a bug-out location ready, and accepting you might evacuate for nothing. Most people won't do that. They'll call it paranoia, right up until the moment they're proven tragically right. They'll wait for confirmation. By the time confirmation arrives, physics has already decided their fate. Evacuation works in movies. In reality, you shelter or you die. There's no third option when you're on an island with 11 minutes and 8 million panicked neighbors. So what does that leave you? What choice do you actually have when the math says you can't run and the physics says you can't hide? That's what we need to talk about now. 11 minutes. We started with that number and we're ending with it, because that's all the time you'll have when the missiles fly. But right now, you have all the time in the world. You can ignore this. Assume it won't happen. Hope someone else has a plan. That's what most people do. That's why most people become statistics, names on casualty lists. Their families will never see. I don't want you to be one of them. Or you can prepare. I'm not talking about bunkers or millions of dollars. I've spent 15 years studying this, and I can tell you, the people who survive aren't the richest. They're the ones who took it seriously before it mattered. Know your shelter options, not the subway, actual shelter. Stock 2 weeks of water and food. Buy a battery radio, because when the grid dies, that radio becomes your lifeline. Understand radiation decay curves. Learn the 7-10 rule. Make it muscle memory. Have a plan that doesn't rely on evacuation miracles or government rescue, because in those 11 minutes, you're on your own. The bomb doesn't care if you prepared, physics doesn't negotiate, but preparation changes your odds from 0 to possible. From certain death to maybe, just maybe, you see day 15. I've given you the unfiltered truth. No propaganda, no false hope, just the science of survival. What you do with it is up to you, your choice, your life, and the clock isn't ticking yet. Use that time.